Teresa, I am so happy to see your smiling face. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you? I missed you.
I miss you too. And this is, for me, this is special because we are about to launch season 3 of the podcast.
Wow.
And you were the first guest
Aww.
on this podcast. And it was so fitting because, we were talking about what was happening at the time. Like a lot of other people, I started a podcast during COVID. And I learned that you had COVID, and I also know that you were a Christian. You are a tough believer. And I thought, I want to have her on the show. So it's been a little over a year. In fact, we really didn't celebrate our year anniversary of the podcast because we're celebrating the launch of 3, and it's coming next week.
Wow.
And
I think I had COVID when we talked, when we interviewed.
Yes, you did. You did. You had COVID, and you were the first person that I knew personally that had COVID, and was fairly.
A lot of people told me that.
And you were
unfortunately more and more, But the good thing is, people, I think, saw that it wasn't maybe as scary for some. For some. I mean, I know it was definitely, but I don't know. Just being able to have a familiar experience, have somebody who you knew that you could talk to about their experience, and definitely sharing our faith, too.
Absolutely. And it was not as rough as some had it, but it was still pretty rough. I mean, you were sick. Yeah.
One thing that I did not anticipate, I was down for 2 months. The first month was the physical. But what I didn't anticipate was the mental health aspect. And, that is something that if anyone researches that with like the World Health Organization or the CDC, mental health, the way COVID is definitely affecting some people in their mental health. And I truly believe we haven't begun to see the fallout or the residual of the pandemic, and then just the year that we had. I mean, and in fact, COVID, I like to say, there's a scripture, Romans 8:28 says, all things work together for good to those who love the Lord. And I just believe that there's just, even the worst situation, something good can come out of it. And I'm not saying COVID was the worst, but it was pretty challenging mental health wise. And so I'm really thankful that I've just finished my first year pursuing my master's in social work. And that was really jumped off because of, COVID and my interest in mental health and how it affected me and how it's affecting other people. And I just said, you know what, I want to have some tools, to help people, not just be a listening ear or give advice, but to really have some tools in place. And so I just believe God turned it around and is allowing me to, to use that. And there's so many things I want to do with that, with the MSW, but I'm just chugging away at it, one bite at a time. And so I am happy to say I've just finished my first year.
That is a blessing. And I mean, that's important because, as you said, you were, you had to get your body back together and then get your mind right. As my mother would always say, get your mind right.
Yes.
And that, that took something. You were my first guest for a couple of reasons. You have such a positive, joyful attitude. We've known each other for a long time. And when I found out that you had
iron sharpens iron, I will say that.
When I found out that you had COVID, and we didn't know much about it at the time, right?
Yes, we did.
But I secretly, I think I thought, she is such a half glass full person. She's gonna beat this, and it's gonna be okay. And that's just what I always thought. What I found out later, and then when we talked about it, was that you had this idea to start a blog about the pandemic, but about the fact that we need to praise God no matter what's going on in our lives. And you called it Praises in the Pandemic.
Yes.
However, you started this blog how many months
Oh, in
before
March.
you got sick.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And I got COVID in May
Yes.
and started in March, and I really started out of um my own faith being challenged. I was fearful. And a lot of us were, because we were like, what's getting ready to happen? Just the unknowns, so many unknowns. And I was like, I guess selfishly, wrote the blog for myself. This Praises in the Pandemic, I think is .blogspot.com.
Hmm.
And really just kind of to keep myself encouraged. And one of my favorite gospel songs is sometimes you have to encourage yourself. I'm not a great singer, but I mean, just those words, you really do have to dig deep and encourage yourself. And I was like, Lord, just use it, use it for your glory. And if it can help somebody else to remember your word, I'm definitely not somebody who hits people over the head with the Bible or anything, but I do know what I know, and nobody can take that from me. And I just said, I've got to stand on this word, because these are some times we're in. And there's a few I have not kept it up. Although it's not too late. But I feel like there were still some really worthwhile entries in there, and it's still up, and who knows what could happen with it. But I
Well,
just
the way I look at it is you created that blog for that season.
for a season,
For
yes,
that
for the
season,
time.
but that season is going to outgrow you because other people are going to find that in years to come it's going to stay up, and they're going to find that, and it's going to really bless them in their season.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
I pray that that does happen. And it did actually comfort me, bring me a lot of comfort. And, social media is amazing because you can put things out there and be instantly published, just like with this podcast. I mean, who knew years ago that you could have your own kind of like radio show, and it's just exciting. It's a wonderful medium, um, forms of medium that we have now, and they're powerful, and it's what we can do with them and how can we honor God in them. And you and I being former journalists, well, we'll always be journalists,
Mhm.
we know that power of communication. And so it's just so nice to see that you're in your third season. And I remember when you told me you were doing this, I was like, that was a natural, like I could see that. I could see you doing it, and you've been faithful with it and consistent with it. And so I'm just tickled. I'm so proud of you, and I'm excited to see what's coming next.
Well, I mean, well, you kicked it off. Without you, it certainly I would not have, continued probably like this. So, so it's special that I talk to you now and just catch up with you and see how things are going. So you are, I'm so proud of you in that year of school that you've already got under your belt. Um, toward your mental health studies. I mean, that's just so amazing. You're also director of diversity student programs at Emporia State University. So you got a
Yes.
day job,
Ooh,
student and working.
yes, yes. I love it. Diversity work is, I tell people all the time, especially students when we do workshops or trainings, it's hard, it's weary, exhausting. It is um thought provoking. I've cried many a tear in this office, but yet it's also exhilarating, and it is it's impactful. And I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it. And I don't know, I never saw myself in this kind of role, but I'm just grateful. I'm really grateful for it. And I just want to also give a little, I guess, a side note, that another springboard from the mental health, studying mental health, is I think I mentioned in the first podcast that I lost my husband in 2014 unexpectedly to leukemia, and that has been life changing. And I attend support group every week. And so the pandemic also has blessed me to virtually stay in contact with my Michigan family. I call them my tribe, and I definitely don't mean that offensively toward anybody. I know some people say you shouldn't say tribe, but they truly are family, and I see tribes as family. And so, anyway, I just recently am forming and got the LLC for Two Become One Grief Support. And I
Excellent.
am really feeling led to offer grief spaces for all, but definitely focusing on people of color, because in a lot of the grief spaces I've been in, hasn't been, very diverse. And I would love to bring more people in, because as we know, grief is a thread that ties us all together. Unfortunately, we always say in our group, "Welcome to the club nobody wants to be part of." And spouse loss and partner loss. All losses are different, but I have a keen interest in spouse loss because it was, my husband. And so that's something that down the line I really see myself doing, is offering, especially virtual grief support, because I can spread farther, farther reach. And the licensing, I think, and then the credential of being a widow, I think will serve me well. And again, turning something that the devil meant for bad into good, you know,
Wow.
and it'll be cathartic for me, while also hopefully healing for other people. And I just think if we had a space like that in every city, it wouldn't be enough. We need more spaces where people can feel like if they see my face, they might feel more apt to say, "Hey, I could go to that," because she could maybe relate to me, or you know, this is a diverse space, and so that's just something that I'm working on the side. So
Wow. Wow. That is, well, I know that you would be perfect in that. Um, you are, again, you just, there's so much peace and joy that emanates from you. And you, like I
praise
said,
God.
people, yes, well, yes, it's all to him.
'Cause I don't always it's all Jesus.
It's all Jesus, exactly right. And I just think that people will be able to relate to you.
Mhm.
Oh, so many good things there. I actually, and I have some ideas. So I'll talk to you about that off camera.
Oh, good. And once
Yes,
I'm
yes.
working on getting the website up, and so I will keep you posted, and that way,
Okay.
if we could share resources. I could share your podcast on my site, and you could maybe plug my
Oh, of
or
course.
maybe once Two Become One gets up and running, I can come back and talk a little bit more about that. But and
No,
I
I
have to
love that.
say, the name, God gave me that name at like 3 o'clock in the morning one morning. But you know, two become one when we get married. But then when we lose them, we become one again.
Mm,
And so it really does come, full circle. And the people deal with it so many different ways.
yeah.
And so I just really envision a space where people can come and just breathe, a listening circle, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
You
people can come and not say anything if they don't want to, and then come and talk about their spouse all they want, and not be judged, or their experiences. And so
Yeah. You said that you experienced um, the bodily decline during COVID, but
mhm.
also mental challenges. And I wonder, can you talk a little bit about exactly what that felt like? And do you think that the loss that you have suffered all these years also entered into what you
Yeah.
were feeling?
I definitely think that it was compounded, the isolation, because I am an extrovert. And the isolation was something I was not used to. And
And
it was
you
extended.
had just moved too,
Yes, I have moved
away from your.
14 hours away from my kids,
Mhm.
and for this role. And so yes, I think things just really, and if anything, it showed me we must deal with our pains and our our hurts and the things that we think we're over. And I wouldn't trade that time for anything. It was a very challenging time, but and you said what it look like? Like it was, bed being. I'm not a lay in the bed person, but it was just really not motivated, not even knowing what to pray, not even knowing what to pray, but God really showed out. He showed me I am right here. I couldn't even see my mother. I couldn't even visit my 92 at the time 92-year-old grandmother. And it was just like, Lord, I am all alone, and it was kind of a stigma a little bit too, because like you said, it was still fairly new, and people, they didn't want to be around you. And not only that, but you didn't want to be around people because you're afraid you're going to give it to them. And so God really just, and I don't know how people do it without a foundation of faith. And because I was shaken with a foundation of faith.
Hmm.
So I can't imagine if people don't know Christ, and so anyway, that was just I wouldn't trade it. I had people praying for me, like I said, because I didn't know. I didn't know. There were moments where I truly didn't know what um what to pray. And so he truly got me through it and brought me out of it, even to where he gave me instruction to exercise. You wouldn't think that when you're sick, but I really felt like the Holy Spirit said, do some exercise so that your lungs will stay, because a lot of people, their lungs will be affected
Hmm.
and would
Hmm.
lock up. And so I would, be so weak and tired, but I would make myself in my spare room just do things to just keep the air. And I believe that was, he really spared me. He really spared me.
Wow. Wow.
So yeah.
I
But
believe it.
I'm just grateful to be here. And when I came back to work, I really waved the mental health banner big. And that was another thing. We also changed up some of my events and initiatives in my office to include, mental health spaces for the students, because the students were really going through, they really, as you saw, I'm sure on your
Oh
campus
yeah.
too,
Yeah.
we all
Absolutely.
have seen. And to be able to offer up some support spaces, some racial healing, some grief. We even offered some grief spaces all year. So it was just a blessing. It was really a blessing. And in the midst of it all, in November, I have a Hispanic Heritage Month committee, of comprised of community and campus folks. And one of the community members was my cousin Amanda Rodriguez, and she succumbed to COVID. And
Hmm.
so I just, you just don't know. She was in the hospital and she was coming home. She had posted on Facebook, "I can't wait, I'm coming home," and took a turn and passed. And this next Saturday actually is her memorial. Even though it happened in November,
Hmm.
we're gonna have a memorial. And then when we have our festival in October, we're going to do a tribute to her as well as other people who have succumbed to COVID. And so, no day. I just say all that to say nothing is promised, and no day is promised. So we must have joy, positively joy, and dig deep. And there's always something to be joyful about. I don't care what the circumstance. There's My husband used to say, he used to tell our sons when they would kind of complain about what they didn't have, and he said, "There's always somebody who wishes they had what you had."
Oh yes.
And I think about that, and that's enough to give you joy to be like, wow, I do have something. I have a roof, I have transportation, or I have my health, or I can see, or what have you. Or if you have a parent who's still alive,
Hmm.
or what I'm saying. We always There's something to have joy about, or just simply, I have the love of Christ. Like, he loves me regardless. So I'm so glad that you're
Absolutely.
doing this podcast, because our world is hurting in so many ways, and this is just a bright spot to remind us that there's joy out there.
I,
There's
you
joy.
know, I've been doing this, as I said, it's been a little over a year now. And when I started, I really didn't know. I just heard him say, "Do this," and I said, "Okay," because yes, Lord,
Mhm.
that's what you say, right? Yes, Lord. Um, but I really lately, I've been thinking a lot about the purpose. Um, I felt like I've called him, or he's called me to turn this into a ministry of some kind, and so it is. So it is a digital ministry right now, right? Um, but I've been trying to really think about what and I feel like he is really he wants people to understand what joy is. And he wants people to understand that it's his joy, that we need to walk in his joy and just
Yes.
not we don't need to be happy all the time. Happiness is not joy. Um, it's not a feeling, it's faith.
Yes.
Joy is not a feeling, it's faith. And so that's what I'm really strongly feeling that he's wanting people to understand that because he never promised us all the good times.
No.
He only promised us that he'd be there.
And strength to get through it.
Exactly.
And I think that is so important to for people to know that just because we're believers doesn't mean we're not going to go through. Nobody he didn't promise we weren't going to get COVID or we're not going to, because we're in
Yeah.
a man-made world, not a man-made world, sorry. We're in a world that is, it's man
Yeah.
but he did say I've armed you. I give you, the tools and the whole armor of God, and we got prayer, we got he wouldn't have gave us all that if he didn't think we were going to need it, or if he didn't want us to use it.
Right.
Because
Right.
if we didn't have any challenges, he wouldn't give us these things to fight back in the
Hmm.
spirit. So I'm excited about where the reach of this podcast, and who knows what he's going to do with it, and we don't limit him, do we?
No, no, we don't. And I'm the kind of person that feels like I want to be really careful about pride, right? I mean, I'm just always, I feel like that's an
Yes.
issue. And it's not like I don't want to be successful, but I want this to go where it needs to go. I want the
Yes.
people that need to hear it, and I want
Yes.
people
And
to
if you're anything like me, you want it right now. I'm like, okay, I did it. So overnight success. He's like,
but I mean, he's definitely blessed it. And I just have to say thank you to you for starting it all.
oh, my
It's been
pleasure.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
And
tell me how much.
you have oh, go ahead.
No,
I was
no,
gonna
you
say,
go.
I was just gonna say, I hope I don't know if you have already, but if you have not, I hope you do a podcast on the Bible journaling, because that has brought me some joy, and I don't do it like quite like, I mean, we all do it differently, I think, but I mean, there is just such fun that comes out of that. And so I really hope
And it's
that
so funny because I have not. I blogged about it, but I have not. So, um, and I'm happy that I've been able to introduce that art
I
form.
don't think I would have done it if I hadn't seen some of your posts on Instagram. I was like, what is that? And it's like, it was so beautiful and creative. And
That's
and
another
then to
gift.
find out that there's so many outlets, like
Yeah,
so many people doing it, and I was like, what?
I know.
I would love to, you can also have me back if you ever talk about vision boards.
Yeah.
I am a vision board person. Like, I've never gone to a class or anything like that. I just make them for myself. They're all over my apartment. I believe in vision boards. You write the vision and make it plain. You put, you put things on there that are bigger than you, that
Yes.
that only God can do.
Yes.
And it's not a wish list. It's just kind of, what do I see? What do I want? What do I want for my children?
Mm.
For my gifts, my ministry gifts of writing. I have a vision board just for that. I have a travel board. I have all these all these different ones. And they don't even have to be, I got away from doing pictures. Now I really put I make them real colorful, have markers and stuff. And I just write words or scriptures, or, and then
Well,
to have it before you.
yeah, we'll have to have a creativity podcast because I really believe that he's given us so many gifts. Creativity is one of them, and I really believe that he wants us to use that creativity
Yes.
in it, like all things we do, in his honor. I mean, that
Yeah.
is what in everything that we do. And I think that we need to use creativity. Now, tell me, this last question I was going to ask you, tell me,
Okay.
how many more years do you have to your studies and when you can get your certificate of, um, and I'm
Probably
not,
about, I'm thinking like 2 years, but I'm not going
okay.
to wait that long to start the grief support. I've
Okay,
already
good.
got the LLC.
Okay,
I'm,
perfect.
I thought about that too. I was like, oh, do I have to be licensed? But I know a lot of people who, not a lot, but I know some people who are doing support. I think as long as you're not, I don't know, but I think that you can offer support spaces and like not diagnosing or things like that. But really, somebody told me, they said your credential is the fact that you're a widow. Just do
Yeah,
it. And this
yeah,
was
yeah.
from a widow friend that is desperate for this space. She's like, just please do it,
Yeah.
in South Carolina, and then others in Michigan and Missouri, and people who I was like, "Would you come?" Yes, I would come. I need something like that. So I'm not going to wait on that. I'm just kind of getting my logo together, really, the logo and the website, and then just take off with it, and probably just do a series at first. Just maybe do like a 3 or 4 part series, and kind of do a
Okay.
pilot, see what happens, and then
I
just keep offering it.
I say go for it. Well, I just want to thank you again for the inspiration that you always give me, that you've given me. You started this podcast, or helped me launch it with being the first guest on here. And so I just felt like it was fitting that you come back. You look great.
Oh,
You
thank
sound great.
I
So
feel good. God is
good.
good
Yes.
all the
Yes, he is.
time.
Well, thank you so
And
much,
thank you
Teresa.
for having me.
Yes, we will be checking back in on you to see your progress and see how things are going. Okay. Okay.
Okay, all right. Well, you take care and we'll talk soon.